Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our reaction and review for the morning show, season 1, episode 5. A lot of stuff going on in this episode. We are really firing on all cylinders now. We have
Mhm.
gone past the great Kelly Clarkson performance, and now we are in the hot mess of things. Everything is falling apart. The bombshell New York Times report is dropping. Alex.
I felt really bad for Alex in this episode. I mean, we always sort of hear in these types of situations from, two sides really only, like the Mitch side and the women's side, but we don't usually hear a lot of sort of the struggle of the people that knew the person, that felt betrayed by the person as well, that it like we saw that with Alex, we saw that kind of with Mia as well in this episode, sort of the fallout of that of like, man, this person was my friend, like I'm having like a real pull apart inside myself of somebody that I've known for 15 years that I loved, was my friend. I was, my partner in crime here, at the morning show. And like, it's hard to sort of reconcile that inside of yourself. And we really saw Alex struggling with that.
This is an emotional episode. It's also still funny at times. There's a lot of stuff we're sort of getting into with Bradley, with Alex, with the whole ensemble. Were it not for the fact that, we're recording this knowing full well that season 3 is going to be premiering really soon,
Very soon.
I would be thinking that these two are not going to make it. If this was the real world and we were watching the morning show in real time, I would be compelled, but I would also be gravely concerned.
Yeah, like Alex is starting to be concerned that Bradley is her replacement.
We will get more into that, but before we do, be sure to join our Patreon. We have a link in the description below.
Mhm.
Every Monday night, we are over there doing a live stream talking about the morning show. Also, we are in the midst right now of covering Only Murders in the Building season 3, as
Mhm.
well as Ahsoka on Disney Plus, which has just premiered. So subscribe, and we don't want you to miss any of that.
Absolutely. Okay, let's start in with everything that's going on with Alex because this was a very heavy episode for Alex. She's throwing this sort of charity event. She's got people there she doesn't really want to deal with, like Cory. They have this really weird duet that happens there that really just puts her in this frame of mind of missing, I guess, that sort of counterpart to herself that she had with Mitch, where it's just kind of like that natural back and forth that she doesn't really have with Cory, but was kind of just reminding her of what she had with Mitch and how Mitch really messed this up for everybody, but also for her. And she is the viewpoint that we don't usually get to see when these types of stories are breaking or you're hearing about them. You don't really hear about the fallout of the people that weren't necessarily involved, but a little bit involved because, we had that whole thing with Bradley where she called out Alex to be like, how much did you know? Like, did you know what was going on? How dare you? Not in my house.
No,
But she did know something, and she did admit that in this episode, not to Bradley, but that she
no.
was kind of like, yeah, I kind of knew something, but I didn't know everything.
She knew enough to the extent that she could have said something. She could have, at the very least, had a conversation with Mitch, being like, you need to stop this. And I think, as much as she is going at Mitch and questioning Mitch, I think she's also questioning herself
Mhm.
of, why didn't I speak up more? Why didn't I do this to potentially change this? It's a part of her unraveling, and also her trying to figure out how much ownership she needs to take in her own
Mhm.
sort of place in this situation, where she obviously can't control Mitch. Mitch is going to do whatever horrible thing that Mitch is going to do,
Correct.
but at the end of the day, she's also the person who brought in Bradley. And she's the person who went up there and made that proclamation that Bradley was joining the morning show. And that has sort of bled into that interview. And then Bradley questioning her directly, how much did you know? And then that spawns all these sort of theories and fears that, whether it is this New York Times thing, whether it's some other sort of fallout from that, it's going to come out explicitly that she knew X, Y, or Z, or even if it comes out that she knew something that she actually didn't know, at a certain point, once it sort of comes out that you knew something, the court of public opinion is going to just take over, and they're going to be like, you knew this, this, and this, and it doesn't even matter whether or not you really did.
Yeah, that it there seemingly these days is no real gray area, which is where Alex is kind of living in, where it's like, okay, I knew something, but she didn't really know, like, is it something that they both were wanting, involved in? Is it not that way? Is there a power dynamic? She didn't know all the context to it. So for her, it's like, okay, I knew something, but I didn't know everything. But in the court of public opinion, it doesn't matter. If you know something, you know everything, which is not true.
Yeah, it really, I think it's all adding up more and more and more in her head because she's been around this business. Like she has been in morning news for well over a decade. She knows how stories like this work.
Yeah, and seeing her leave her own party
Yeah.
after that duet with Cory where she was really in her head about Mitch and she hasn't really dealt with it, to then go and see him and they're driving around and they're having a smile, and that dynamic that was there is still there with them. They're friends, they were co-workers, they have hooked up twice, but it was just like there was something deeper there with them, to the point that even Mitch at one point is like, I'm separated now. I'm like, you're not with anybody. Why don't we actually give this a go? Like, you and I are something, and we've always been something. And they share this kiss, and Alex is like, man, like, I don't know. Like, there's this whole thing that's surrounding you, and then sort of these questions about whether or not I knew. Like, I would like this, but I just can't. And then the story drops.
Okay, Mitch made me so mad in this. I mean, Mitch has made me mad in every episode. Like, let's be honest here. But this real assertion that he makes at this like extreme emotional, vulnerable time in Alex's life, or
Hmm.
he's basically just saying, "Run away with me." That you know what. You know, we've had these experiences together. We can do this. You're asking this woman to basically put her job at greater risk or leave
Yep.
her job to be further associated with you, who you have already tanked your own career because of your actions. Anything that happens to her career is a result to what she did or did not say because of your actions. Like he is he is such a jerk. Like he is, in so many
Hmm.
different ways, without he's trying to manipulate her and all of this other sort of, and who knows where this conversation would have gone had this report not dropped
Yep.
at that particular point, because it kind of forces them to cloister themselves up and just focus on actually reading what is out there.
Yeah, because Alex is still, trying to hold on to her job. She's trying to hold on to her reputation. She is dealing in this gray area of lost feelings that she has for Mitch, professionally, friendship, love, all these different things. And he is just basically asking her to give up her whole life, give up her career, run away with him because he's feeling isolated. He doesn't have anyone. We saw him come to the studio and be like, anybody, this piece is going to be coming out. Can somebody please stand up for me? I was with you guys for so many years. Like, you guys know me. He even calls out Alex specifically. Alex, you know me. Like, please stand up for me. He's really just looking for somebody, anybody to be on his side that is not Martin Short.
It's he still doesn't want to admit to being what he is. And that's one of the biggest challenges that character faces, is that
Yes.
until he actually owns up and is like, I have engaged in this behavior that was really, really wrong. I'm sorry. How can I actually redeem myself? As opposed
Yes.
to he's too busy in trying to defend himself. And there's a very big difference. Like he, instead of trying to acknowledge his past and move forward, he's trying to deny his past and sort of shape a narrative that he is still this wholesome morning news persona. And that's never going to work.
No, not with those details that
Yeah.
were coming out, like the chevron bathroom. Like, as they were having that meeting and like listing off like really intimate details of what was happening with Mitch. Like, it was just getting, as Alex was kind of reading, she's like, oh, you know what? No, I can you please just drop me off? Like, I can't. Like, now that I'm being really faced
Yeah.
with the things that you did and where you were doing them and stuff, like, she's like, I just can't. And it really was overwhelming.
The thing that's really, it's frustrating for viewers, but this is a story. Like, they're trying to tell a specific story with characters that are going to feel certain things. And Mitch, after this story is coming out, we haven't watched ahead, but
No.
Mitch is going to undoubtedly try to go after the reporters, try to say that this stuff was embellished, they're not telling the full story. It's not going, I just doubt it's going to change any part of his behavior. It's probably just going to make him more aggressive in his pursuit of saying how wrong all these people are for twisting his stories and making them into something that they weren't.
Yeah, that last phone call where he was basically like, "Oh, you guys are all gonna burn me. Fred, you're gonna burn me.
Yeah,
I'm gonna burn everybody." Because for Mitch, it feels like, I mean, we know what's going on with Yanko as well. We
yeah,
don't know what could or couldn't have been going on with Fred or anybody else there because, I mean, Chip seemed pretty worried
yeah,
too. And we don't know what he was or wasn't doing. I mean, at one point he said to Bradley, he was like, we're not all jerks here. There are some of us
yeah.
that are doing the right thing and have been doing the right thing. Like, you don't need to burn the whole station to the ground. There's some good people here. But we don't really know if Chip Charlie is one of those people because we saw him
Yeah.
with Robbie the reporter basically being like, I helped you. You can give me a heads up. No, I can't. Oh, okay. I see you now. And there's a lot of that sort of everybody has secrets. And I think for Mitch, he's probably like, yeah, okay, my secrets have come to the surface, but you guys are hiding dirty hands with clean gloves. Like, it's not going to happen for you guys. I know where all the skeletons are buried. So does Chip. He said that as well. He knows where things are buried and everybody has something. So I am very curious if Mitch is going to be like, "Oh, okay, I'm going to burn. The whole world's going to burn. Let's go."
I'm really curious about Chip right now because Charlie Chip, I believe a certain part of what he says that not everybody there is just these bad, terrible people. And I want to believe that there is a part of him that is just fully in self-preservation mode to try to save his job, to try to save the jobs of some other people who are good, who are at the morning show, and that maybe he tried to do his best in a very, very bad situation. And I think it's clear that there are some very bad eggs in this organization. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Fred ends up getting taken down in the midst of all of this.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I mean, I think we all kind of know that this happens, but it was interesting to see it on the show where Fred is basically making a deal with the Times to be
Yeah.
like, if you take out this quote from this woman that worked for me, which is going to be really damaging to me, I'll give you this Mitch story that he showed up here and asked everybody for help and we'll make a trade. I was just like, it I I mean, it happens, and I'm sure that it happens, but it was interesting to see it go down that way.
Yeah, it's a part of the world that television doesn't really show, and I'm sure it's not the only time that we're going to see something like that happen. I'm not surprised at the Times response because as reporters, you don't want other people to control your narrative and say, okay, you can say this, you can't say this, and there's a real delicate balancing act that comes with all of this. But Fred at this point got to be shaken in his boots. The only network executive right now who I feel like can actually breathe a little, Cory. Cory. See, he's
Oh, Cory, and oh man, I feel like I'm gonna regret being
no,
like, oh, Cory. But we saw everything that was happening with Bradley and her dad popping up, and how she's, you get famous and
yeah,
people pop up, right? People out of your past, you haven't talked to him forever. All of a sudden, it's like, hey, how's it going? Oh
yeah.
man, I feel so bad that I did you so dirty, but I'm here for you now. It's just like, are you? I mean, she's kind of starting to realize that her fame is really growing at a crazy speed. People showing up out of the woodwork, and it's really getting to her. So that even when she's at this table, she with some of her coworkers, she's not really understanding the power dynamic that's going on there. And I mean, even with some of the other ones we saw, it's Claire's birthday. She's 24, and Mia, who's really in it with Mitch as well, where she feels responsible for a lot of this. And even though it wasn't her intention to really blow this all up the way that she did, and she's
Yeah.
also feeling like Alex, kind of conflicted. She had an affair with Mitch for a year, and where she was just like, yeah, what I had was something different and it was something special and it meant something. And he's not all bad. He's not all good. That's where she's kind of landing. But everyone else, like Claire's just like, ah, no, done with him kind of thing. He's the worst. He's just all bad. And it's interesting to see those kind of different dynamics going on. But for Bradley,
Yeah.
she is really having a hard time balancing out where she is anymore. She gets really drunk.
Yeah.
She hooks up with the bartender and then she goes to Cory. Cory seems to be the person that's a bit of a rock for her, and he understands her in a way I think nobody else really does, and I think she understands him in a way that nobody else does. And he does end up showing up for her where she's looking for him. He walks in the door, he's like, yeah, I got you, come on. And she just falls into his arms, not in a romantic way, but really in a like, I just need comfort kind of way. He just hugs her, and it doesn't feel like anything I was worried about, where I was like,
Mm. Yeah.
is he going to take advantage? Like, she's really drunk. They're alone in the elevator. They're going upstairs. There was no sort of look on his face. There was no way that he was holding her that made me feel like it was going in a weird way. He was really just hugging her out of just pure like care, is what it felt like.
I feel like he cares about her. I think he realizes that, he is riding this ship with her. He understands that if this doesn't work, he's probably going to fail. He's probably going to be a fall guy as a result of all of this because he's taking a really, really huge risk. So I'm sure career wise, that's something that is on his head. But I think personally, they connect on a really interesting level where it's kind of been alluded to already that Corey doesn't necessarily come from a line of rich network executives or anything like that. It
Mhm.
feels like he has really worked to get to this point. He has hustled. Bradley is somebody who has hustled, I think,
Yeah.
because Corey hasn't been in this part of, UBA for a long period of time. He's a relative newcomer.
Mhm.
Bradley is a newcomer. You become attached to those sort of people. And I think because he's been around other rich and successful people, he can kind of relate and understand some of her struggles because this is what I'm really curious about if Reese or Jennifer Aniston like really collaborated with the scripts on some of this, the feeling of isolation you get when you get to a certain level of fame where it's
Mhm.
like Jennifer Aniston can't walk down the street in New York 'cause she would get mobbed by a lot of people. And I know a response to that is going to be like, well, you're rich, you're famous, you don't need. It's like, sure, that's great. You can have a great apartment, money, not have to worry about your future, but it's still got to be hard sometimes. And that's a big adjustment that Bradley is going to have to make where who knows what will come out of this hookup with this bartender. Is the bartender going to go to some like tabloid and be like, oh, I was with Bradley, blah,
Mhm.
blah, 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 blah. Like, this is stuff you have to worry about now.
Yeah, when fame comes really fast, or even if it grows at a slower pace, it is something that is really isolating. And shows do not really ever tackle this. I mean, nobody really tackles this for exactly what you said. The,
Yeah.
the public opinion is kind of like, oh, poor you, you're famous
Yeah.
and you're rich, boo hoo. But it's like, okay, but there is a price to pay for that. Okay, yeah, you're rich, you're famous, great, but you are going to be isolated. You are going to be like, who's really here for me? Oh, my dad is calling me. Like, why? You didn't talk to me for all these years. Now all of a sudden you're like, hey, I'm really sorry about everything. Can we work it? It's just like, okay, are you for real? Or is this because I'm famous and you want something from me? It makes it really difficult to be able to figure out who's there for you genuinely, who is not there for you genuinely. And like, because of that, you do end up in situations like Alex, where it's like, okay, my door's just closed to everybody. And that's why Mitch and this betrayal is so hitting so deeply because Alex is very isolated. Mitch was one of the few people. It's like, okay, well, he understands that because he's here in it with me. And now you've got Bradley, who's just like, doesn't really have her family
Yeah.
and she doesn't really have anybody. She's going to have a major breakdown. Who's she going to go to? Cory, who she
Yeah.
barely knows.
All right. Tinfoil hat. Here's what's gonna happen here in the long term. Eventually, some more stuff is gonna come out that makes Alex look very bad in the press. Bradley is gonna continue to get more famous, find a certain element of success.
Mm-hmm.
There's not gonna be a jealousy between the two of them. Like I've said, I don't want to see that, but there's gonna be a real like moral conflict where Bradley starts to wonder more and more, can I work with someone who is in this sort of position because she's got her own journalistic view of things. Cory is going to find himself right smack in the middle of all of this. And I think he's going to try to keep the stability of this network and keep things going. You've already replaced one anchor. Maybe you do want to replace Alex down the road, but you don't want to do it right away. Like, that's really, really bad.
Yeah, Maggie talking to her, Alex, at that party where Alex was just like, she's looking for credit
Yeah.
for bringing Bradley on and making this bold choice and on and on and on. Maggie's like, is this on the record? Like, are you trying to get me to write this type of piece
Yeah.
about how did all this and, you're responsible. You guided her in this interview. Bradley didn't do anything. You're the mastermind behind it all because really you're going to end up getting replaced by Bradley. And Maggie's one of the first people to really bring that to her attention to be like, that's really the story.
Can I just say how horrible that party looked? I do
I
not want to go.
know.
I don't care
No.
how rich you are. I don't care how nice everything looks. I don't want to watch some rich, pretentious people wander around having really good posture while somebody sings terrible karaoke. Like, Cory actually decent. I will give you a little bit of credit here, Cory. I feel like you sing better than any real life executive probably would.
For me, I just don't like watching people sing on shows if it just isn't like I've never been into like, oh, we're driving in the car and we're karaokeing. Oh, we're having a charity and we're all singing. Like the singing numbers just go on too long for me. I really like musicals and I love going like to the theater and hearing musicals. And if it makes sense on a show, then I'll sit through a musical number. But it was just kind of like, I know we needed it to get to the point that Alex was going to go and find Mitch, but there's no connection with her and Cory. Like,
Yeah,
there's nothing there.
it's true. If
It went on a little bit long for me.
if we're gonna see Cory with somebody at this point, him and Bradley have some sort of inherent connection, but we'll see where things go from here. We
Yeah.
still have a lot of season 1 to
Yep.
navigate. So we hope you guys are along for the ride. Join our Patreon. We have that link in the description. Live streams on Monday night about the morning show. Thank you to our patrons. We'll see
Thank
you
you.
here next time.